From Moment to Movement with Tamara Banks has been made possible through the generous support of the Anchor Point Foundation, helping nonprofit organizations and leaders creatively solve problems in their communities around the world.
Racism is steeped into the very core of this country. And now, in 2020, Black voices are tired of being ignored, muffled, and killed. Millions of Americans are demonstrating, protesting to make their voices heard, especially Black Americans. A movement has to arise from the ashes of the moment. From Moment to Movement is a series of one-on-one truth-telling conversations with the Black community, aimed at working towards addressing police brutality and changing systemic racism.
Joining us now is Jason St. Julien. Jason is a prosecutor for the Department of Justice, and he's based in Denver. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Good morning, Tamara. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Now, we should say from the onset that we're not talking about ongoing cases with the Department of Justice or anything you're currently working on. Just to be fair to our viewers, because they're going to want to know, why am I not asking certain questions? But we, as a journalist, I know we can't ask you those specific questions. But what we do want to hear from you is sort of your background and your experience, essentially as being a Black man in America. So let me start with the first question to you, Jason, is that often we see African Americans, men and women, going into law practice as defense attorneys. You went a different path. Tell me a little bit about why you decided to be a prosecutor.
Sure. So the first part of that question, the answer to that question, is that when I looked at what do I really want to do, criminal law to me is just more interesting than civil law. So I chose criminal law based on that. And second, I had the privilege of working and clerking for 2 federal district court judges and being in court almost every single day for 3 years. And based on my experiences in the courtroom, I chose to be a prosecutor because that's what interested me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I understand that. So as we kind of take a look at some of the incidences that are occurring across the country, which has really never stopped since Black Africans were brought to this country as products and animals. When you see these videos that are making the headlines and still making the headlines a month or more later, with George Floyd in particular, and then we hear the stories of Breonna Taylor, and then Ahmaud Arbery going for a jog in Brunswick, Georgia, and being literally run down, and with two white men with a shotgun. What goes through your mind?
So, Tamara, the best way I can explain this, well, first of all, I haven't watched all these videos in their entirety because that is entirely too close to home for me. As a Black man, I live that every day. And those videos, it's too tough to watch. So number one, I haven't watched all the videos in their entirety because that's a very difficult thing to see someone who looks like me being hunted down and killed. Now, the best way I can explain, the spaces that I go through when I see these things are that it's like a rubber band. I expand and I contract. And I have these amazing moments where I'm expanding and I'm empowered because I'm making a difference when we're talking about the conversation about race. And I'm sharing of myself and I'm having a conversation, getting in someone else's world and making a difference. And then I also have moments where, I'm contracting when I don't want to get present to the fact that this is still happening. I don't want to get present to the fact that I'm hearing news reports of young Black men being found hanging in trees. Like I don't want to see that. And I don't want to realize that that's reality. And so day in, day out, I have these moments of expanding, contracting, hundreds and hundreds times every day. And, the most important part of that, Tamara, is that I've given myself permission to feel whatever there is to feel, and not make it wrong that I'm contracting, and not make it wrong that I may be angry or frustrated. And in the midst of that, that gives me power to then expand again and actually be the difference in this conversation about race.
Well, you raise a very important point that people will say, but it didn't happen to you, or I didn't own slaves, or I wasn't the cop who did this. But what I think I hear you saying is that the emotional trauma is a domino effect, not just through the community and nation at large, but really within the Black community. So the first thing you think of when you see a police officer coming at you, I'm going to run, and so people will say, well, you shouldn't run because now you're look suspicious. Well, the trauma of being of 3 or 4 centuries now of what has happened to Africans and African Americans is now sort of steeped into our DNA. Is that what I hear you saying?
It is. And, to comment on a point you made, like, look, this has happened to me. Look, Tamara, I come from a place where there was a KKK meeting and or program televised every other week or every week. I come from a place where people sent my dad hate mail saying that he was the token N-word. I come from a place where people have spat on me, thrown food at me. I come from a place where in high school, someone killed black cats, gutted them, and left them in our yard to send a message. Like, that's the place where I come from. So look, this is real. This is absolutely real. It's happening. And Tamara, this is not just something, that happened, 100 years ago. When I got food thrown on me, this was in law school. So we're not talking about maybe 8-9 years ago. In my lifetime, these are things that I experienced. And while Black and brown people are not monolithic, we do have a shared experience. And my own unique experiences are just an individuation of the larger shared experience. So I say what I've experienced isn't necessarily just unique to me.
So let me just ask you real quick. You don't have to say specifically which school you went to, although we could Google it, or where you grew up. Just curious, were you born and raised in the South with these experiences?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because I'm currently living in Atlanta, so it's nothing unusual for me to, not so much in Atlanta, but just outside Atlanta in various parts of Georgia, to see Confederate flags, and even in Atlanta, Confederate soldier monuments. But what I want people to understand is that these sorts of things don't just happen in the South. They happen in Denver. They happen in Los Angeles. They happen in Minneapolis. So, so back to your experience. It just I hear a lot of people, often younger folks in their 20s, but sometimes people in other age groups too, saying, "Wow, racism has just really picked up recently." But what you're sharing with me, that is this is not something new that just happened, something that just got in the headlines because 2020 has just been a crazy year. How do we reach then forward and pull up our young people that are coming up behind us, whether they're in law, journalism, education, and what have you, to sort of synthesize, take in what's coming in, be informed, but not be, for lack of a better term, overwhelmed and paralyzed and unable to just live and sort of want to shut down and lock themselves away from reality?
Sure. So my first response to that is that we have to model that it is okay to feel whatever we're feeling. That, Tamara, we can't make it wrong that, I'll use the pronoun I can't make it wrong that I'm feeling frustrated or sad or angry or bitter. Now, that's not a place to just stay in that place, because there's no, whatever action I take out of that place isn't going to be empowering. But the first part is, look, however you're feeling, that's okay. Like, don't run away from it. Like, just be with it. Okay. Now that I'm with my anger, frustration, bitterness, okay, what is there to do? Because look, myself, you, we are modeling to those coming behind us what it is like to be a part of this movement. They are watching us and they are listening to us. And what there is to do is take action. You know, look, we can hope all we want. We can think all we want. You know, where we impact the world is action. You know, Werner Erhard made an amazing quote when he said that it's important that you get clear for yourself that your only access to impacting life is action, because the world doesn't care what you think, what you want, how you feel. You know, take a look at life as it is lived and see for yourself that the world only moves for you when you act. So to answer your question, it's okay to be whatever way you are. Be with that. And then now, okay, what action can we take? What action can we take right now to move the ball?
And what action can people take? Young, old, black, white? What are some constructive things to do, you think?
Sure. This all starts with a conversation. Because Tamara, look, the idea of race, all that is a conversation. And that conversation started hundreds of years ago. And it's a conversation. And we can transform that conversation if we are willing to have conversations with other people about it. And notice that the word I'm using, conversation, not an argument. You know, in an argument, no one's going to move the ball. And in that conversation, look, we have to tell the truth. We have to say what is real, because until we master the truth, there's no way that we can master the conversation. So to answer your question, what action you can take, look, that everybody today will have an opportunity in some type of conversation. They may hear something or see something, and they can make the stand and say, look, I just heard this or saw this. And what you did or what you said, the purpose of that was to subjugate Black and brown people. And I don't tolerate that. And if that's who you choose to be, then I'm not tolerating that. Like, that is a simple step that we can take. And people would be amazed that, look, when we tolerate nothing and we acquiesce to nothing, like, people tend to start straightening out.
That's right. Right. Jason, if there's part of the reason for this show, or the main reason for this show, is that, like I say in the open, is people are, Black folks are tired of being muffled, or their voices ignored, or completely stifled and killed. We want to use this program as a way to elevate and amplify Black voices. And I think now is a time where people, the mainstream white community is ready to at least listen. What is it that you want to say if you had the ear of your white colleagues, your white neighbors, the white folks at the grocery store, the white folks across town in Denver, across the country in Atlanta? What would you like to say?
Two things. So I'd say this to the world, including my white colleagues and friends, that one, this is real. This is happening. Racism and discrimination is real. So let's just be straight on that. Now, the second point is that, look, I declare that we are at the tipping point, that we have reached it, Tamara. It's not as though the tipping point is somewhere off in the near future and we may get there. We have reached the tipping point. We now have a critical mass of human beings, Black, brown, white, across the world, that are no longer willing to accept status quo as it relates to race relations. Like, we are there. And now the question is, what action are we going to take? Because Tamara, if we wait for someone else to come do something, that's not going to happen. You know, there's not going to be some opportune moment to take action. The moment is opportune when you say it's opportune. And I declare we're at the tipping point, and we have a critical mass of human beings ready and willing to transform this conversation about race.
Great. Jason St. Julien, that's a perfect place to end our conversation, although I know we could talk for many more hours, but hopefully this is just the beginning of the conversations. And as you said, that's the place to start. I so appreciate your time. You stay safe and healthy out there.
I will. And thank you, Tamara, for all that you are doing now, all that you've done in the past, and all that you will do to make a difference for the world and everyone that you interact with. Thank you for what you do, and please keep doing it.
You bet. Thank you. And thank you to all our viewers watching us. If you want more information about this episode or others, just go to pbs12.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tamara Banks. We'll see you next time.
From Moment to Movement with Tamara Banks has been made possible through the generous support of the Anchor Point Foundation, helping nonprofit organizations and leaders creatively solve problems in their communities around the world.